videos, and today we are talking about gingerbread. That's my daughter back there. Say hi. That's Rebecca. And anyway, we're doing gingerbread today. We're doing gingerbread houses. So we've learned how to make sugar cookies. The gingerbread cookie recipe is in our classroom, and it's similar to the cookie recipe, but you need to, there's a lot of spices in it. There's nutmeg and cinnamon and cloves and all kinds of stuff like that make it super yummy. It also uses molasses, and you cannot skip on the molasses. You can't use syrup or something like that. You gotta use molasses to get that real gingerbread taste to it. So we are going to start by making our gingerbread dough and rolling it out. We roll it out just like you do the cookie dough, and then cut out our gingerbread house shape. So let's get going making the cookie dough. Okay, so we're going to start off with 3.5 cups of flour, and of course you want to sift that flour. So 3.5 cups of sifted flour with this one, and I'm going to, let's see here, I'm going to sift this onto a piece of parchment paper so I can measure it better. Okay. All right, so the original recipe calls for 6 3/4 cups, so this is going to be 3 1/3 cups of flour, of sifted flour. Again, you want to make sure that you sift it first and then measure it, because it will be different. Okay, it fluffs it up. So if you measure it before it gets sifted, you'll end up with too much flour in your recipe, and it'll be even stiffer and harder and drier. So you definitely don't want that. So I am sifting the flour. Let me show you that. So I'm sifting the flour through here, and then I'm going to measure out 3 1/3 cups of sifted flour. Okay, so there's 1 cup, 1/2, 2 cups, 2 1/2. Oops, I need some more. Didn't sift enough. All right. That was 3 cups. Hold it. I lost track. Let me try this again. All right, let me try this again because I lost track of my count, and I'm also going to put this into a separate bowl, not my mixing bowl that goes on my mixer, because I want all the dry ingredients here. So, okay, 1/2, 1, 1/2, 2, 1/2, 3, and we want 1/3 cup. Now I have too much flour. Isn't that typical? Okay, 3 1/3 cup of flour. Okay, and that's, there you go. That's about right. Okay. Okay, so we got 3 1/3 cup of the flour. We're going to put all the dry ingredients in here. So all of the spices that make gingerbread what it is are going to go in here. So we're going to use with this one, we're going to use 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. Cinnamon is what my mother-in-law used to always say. So 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. Okay. All right, there's 1/2 teaspoon. All right, there's 3/4 of a teaspoon of cinnamon. Now we want 1/4 of a teaspoon of ginger, ground ginger. Okay, and I've got just I don't know where my 4th teaspoon is. It's disappeared. So there's 1/4 of a teaspoon of ginger. Now 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg. Man, it is smelling good in here. Okay, so 1/2 teaspoon of nutmeg, and then 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground cloves. Okay. Oh, and of course it's not open. Okay. All right, 1/4 of a teaspoon of ground cloves. Man, this smells good. Already it's going to smell wonderful. Okay. All right. Now, oops. We also want 3/4 of a teaspoon salt. All right, there's 3/4 of a teaspoon of salt. Okay, so that is our wet ingredients. I'm sorry, the dry ingredients. Okay. And it also calls for, oops, I missed that part. It also calls for 1/2 cup of sugar. So let me get my sugar. All right, 1/2 cup of sugar. I'm going to whisk together all of these dry ingredients. Okay. Okay. Now we're going to do the wet ingredients, and I'm going to put those into my mixer bowl. I am using a dough hook for this, and we're going to start off with a little bit less than 1/2 cup of shortening. Now you want to use shortening for this one instead of butter. It just makes it a little stiffer. Again, since we are doing this with a gingerbread house, then you definitely want the stiffer dough with that one, okay? So, all right, so there is my little bit less than 1/2 cup of shortening. Okay, I just looked at the recipe a little bit closer, and we're supposed to, you want to microwave the shortening until it is just melted. You don't want it hot, you just want to microwave it until it's just melted. So let me get a bowl. Okay, I did about 45 seconds in the microwave, and now I'm just going to stir it a little bit. You definitely don't want it hot because you're going to add the egg to this in a little bit, and if it's hot, it'll cook the egg in the heat of the shortening. So I did 45 seconds, and now I'm just stirring it a little bit until it's just warm enough to melt everything in there. Okay, now here's a little tip for you that I really should have paid attention to, because I don't do this real often, and it sometimes gets me. It's particularly with a new recipe. Read through the entire recipe before you do anything, because I added the sugar to our dry ingredients, and I was supposed to put it in here with the shortening. Okay, so we're just gonna roll with it. Okay, because I can't add more sugar to it. All right, so I've got the shortening in here, and now I'm going to add 1 cup of molasses. Okay, and you definitely want to use molasses, not syrup or maple syrup or something like that. Molasses is part of what makes gingerbread, it gives gingerbread its distinctive flavor. So definitely use molasses for that one. Okay, and a little secret for getting your molasses is sometimes it's difficult to get it all out of your measuring cup. If you melt your shortening in the measuring cup, because you're using using half a cup of the shortening and then a cup of the thing. But if you melt your shortening in the same bowl and then put the molasses in it, it will come out of your bowl a lot easier. Okay. All right, and now I've got to add 1 egg. Okay. The recipe actually calls for 1 large egg, and because I'm doing only half a recipe, I'm just going to add the egg white, not the egg yolk. Well, I suppose since I'm doing it this way, I could just, I'm going to beat up my egg and then add just half of it in there, okay? So I'm just going to beat this egg. And add half of it in here. Whoops. Okay. I added just a tiny bit too much, so let me take a little egg out. Okay. All right, we're going to mix this together, and then you start adding in the flour mixture. All right, so let me start mixing here. All right, I've got about half of my flour mixture in there. I'm going to stop the mixer and just scrape down the sides, and particularly the bottom. I want the bottom to be well integrated, because sometimes you end up with a bunch stuck down there at the bottom, okay? All right, it's starting to come together pretty well here. And we keep adding the rest of the flour mixture. All right, let's stop and scrape down the sides again. And you don't want to over mix this, so I'm not going to like beat it to death. I just want it to all be incorporated very well, and then it's going to form a nice ball. Okay. I still got some areas around here on the edges and down to the bottom that are not mixing in, so let's get those mixed in. Okay. If you don't have a dough hook on yours, you can use the paddle. It'll just, it might even mix it a little bit better. So, okay. All right, that looks really good. Okay, I'm going to lay out some plastic wrap, and we're going to wrap this up just like we did when we made the sugar cookies. Oops, that's wax paper, not plastic. All right, so let me lay this out on the counter. And then take the gingerbread, just form it into a nice ball and put it in the refrigerator. You need to refrigerate it for at least 30 minutes to get it to come together very nicely into a nice dough ball. Let me make this into 2. That'll make it easier. See, it's a little crumbly. By the time it stays in there and we kind of push it together like this, by the time it refrigerates for a little bit, it won't be as crumbly as that. Okay, so just wrap it up in your plastic wrap and refrigerate for about 30 minutes. Okay, my gingerbread dough has chilled for about 30 minutes, so it's a lot firmer now. And I'm going to roll it out, but I'm going to place a piece of a saran wrap over the top of it just to make it a little easier. I don't want to do a lot of flour on top of it, so I'm going to use saran wrap over the top of it and roll it out. And you want to roll it out to about 1/4 of an inch thick. So get those 1/4 inch sticks out that I showed you how to use with the Linzer cookies, and use those to get your dough an even thickness all the way across. Now you can see that I am rolling this out on this is a silicone baking sheet. It is specifically designed to bake on. Make sure, if you see, there are some that you find at the store that are great for rolling out the pastry, and but they may not be oven proof, and you definitely want to make sure that it is a silicone mat that is oven proof, because we're actually going to bake this gingerbread on this silicone mat, and I'll show you why here in a moment. Let me pull a little bit off the side here so I can get my stick closer. Okay, so get a nice uniform thickness all the way across, or that way, if not, you will end up with parts that burn before the rest of it is done good. Okay, all right, and roll it out. Keep that rolling pin on the sticks to stay at 1/4 inch all the way across. Perfect. Okay, now take the paper off, the saran wrap off, and you've got a perfect thing there. Now, this is a template for a gingerbread house that I looked up online and printed it out and then cut out all of the pieces for it. There are a billion of these that you can get, all the way from very simple like this one up to super, super fancy like Victorian style 2-story with all sorts of porches and stuff like that. So you can go as fancy as you want to. This is a real simple one. I'm going to put this in our classroom so that you can see it. But this is for the ends of it, and it says that you need 2 of these, but only cut a door in one of them. So lay it on here, and then take that knife that and you're just going to take a sharp knife, maybe a pizza cutter would be a good idea to use here, and you're going to cut around your gingerbread house. Okay, so I'm cutting the door on one, and I won't cut the door on the other. And go ahead and cut the windows out right now. So just cut around them, and then use your knife to pull out the center of your windows. And again, you can make your windows whatever shape you want. Okay. And I've got a nice circle one here. Okay. All right, there's one end. And I'll put this one here. And this one, I'm not going to cut the door out. So this one's pretty easy to cut out. Oops. Stay on the lines. Okay. But I am going to cut the windows out of it. Now, if you remember, this recipe did not have any baking soda in it. It had shortening in it, but it didn't have baking soda, and it didn't have any kind of baking powder or anything like that that's going to make it puff up. So this is going to be a pretty hard cookie because of that. Now, here's the side. I'm going to go ahead and cut one side because I've got enough gingerbread here to do that. And go ahead and cut out my windows. All right. And then pull away anything that you don't want, anything that's not a part of the design. This is pulling away a whole lot easier than that than the Linzer dough did. Okay. So pull away anything you don't want. Now, before you put this in the oven, here's where we're going to make a little bit of magic, and we're going to make it look super, super cool. Now, you've got windows here, but what are usually in windows? And that is, they have glass in them. Well, obviously, we can't put glass in this. So, but what we're going to do is we're going to use sprinkles. Now, these are just some regular sprinkles that I have. They're red and white, and I'm going to fill up all the holes where I want windows with these little sugar sprinkles. Can't talk today. Okay, and I'm going to put a good amount in there, and I'm going to go back and make sure that all of them are in the hole. Okay. So good, put a good amount in there. You want to, because they're going to melt down. Okay. So get them all in the hole, and you want it to be kind of heaping up over the top of the level of the cookie. Okay. Now, I did see one hint that someone said is to use sugar-free hard candy for this rather than using sprinkles, or you can use hard candy like a Sucker or a Jolly Rancher or something like that. You can use those as well, and they work really well, but they sometimes, if they have regular sugar in them, they are kind of cloudy when you bake them. And so the sugar-free is actually made out of something called isomalt. And so when it melts clear. So that would be a good thing to do that with. Okay. All right, and now, all right, so I've got all the windows here. Okay, now this is where you definitely need a silicone baking sheet, because when the sugar melts, if you do it on parchment paper or straight on the cookie sheet, it's going to stick to their cookie sheet or the parchment paper and it will never come off. If you put it on silicone, it will come off of there with that one. So make sure that you are using a silicone baking sheet if you want to do the sugar thing. An alternate to that is you could just do leave the windows, don't cut them out, and draw them on with the icing. That's completely up to you which way you want to do it, but I'm going to try this and see how this works, okay? So this is going in the oven and we're going to bake it. It's kind of hard since it's already a brown dough, but you do want it until it's done all the way through and just starting to brown on the edges. Now I've got my silicone. I should have put this on the cookie sheet first, but I'm going to slide a cookie sheet underneath here and put it in the oven. We're going to bake at 350 and it'll take probably 10 minutes or so for this to bake. When you put it on your cookie sheet, make sure that it is completely flat. You can see here that my baking sheet is a little bit too large for this cookie sheet, and I don't want to do that because then I'll end up with a bend in my house, and that will make it not go together very well. Let me get a different cookie sheet. There we go. A little bit bigger cookie sheet works well. Let me get the sugar that's tried to run away, get it back in the windows. Okay. All right, and this is going in the oven. Now I'm going to cut out the other pieces, which are the roof, and we need 2 parts for the roof, and then we also need 1 more of the side pieces, and because it has windows in it, I'm going to wait to put this in the oven until I can use my silicone sheet